We're going to take a listen now. There's New South Wales Premier Chris Minns providing an update.
Cameras are already. I'm joined with the Police Minister Yasmin Catley, as well as Stephen and Sarah from the Alana and Madeline Foundation to speak about legislative changes the government's introducing into the Parliament in what is effectively an emergency session in order to pass much needed legislative change in New South Wales to keep the people of this state safe and to take decisive action in the wake of that terrible terrorist incident last Sunday. Today we're introducing new laws, tough new laws, to protect the community, to crack down on hate and strengthen public safety. The legislation bans the public displays of terrorist symbols, outlaws violence, incitement to violence in New South Wales, and gives police stronger powers during public assemblies. It also delivers the toughest firearm reforms in the country. It does restrict access to high-risk weapons, strengthening licence, storage and oversight regimes in the state. I know that this legislative change will be met with opposition both on the floor of Parliament and in the community. On many of the measures that we're proposing, I've heard members of the public say that we've gone too far, but I strongly believe that these changes to law and legislation in New South Wales are fundamentally important to keep the people of this state safe. We can't pretend that the world is the same as it was before that terrorist incident on Sunday. Things need to change in New South Wales. And as a result, we are making and taking extraordinary measures in relation to public assemblies during a terrorism event. That's in recognition of the fact that while maybe a tinderbox out there in the community during this summer period, we can't let unrestrained violence or disunity in our community run without a strong police presence. I think the vast majority of people in New South Wales, whilst acknowledging that these are extraordinary measures, are absolutely essential in keeping the people of this state safe. The state's number one priority, and my government's number one priority, is to keep the people of New South Wales safe, and that means making these changes. I also want to stress it's not the end of change and reform in New South Wales. This is a huge burden that we feel on our shoulders, and it will require legislative and further reforms early next year. And part of that will be in relation to hate speech in New South Wales, and the government today will refer to a committee hate speech, changes to hate speech legislation, in particular that phrase that's commonly used around the world, globalise the intifada. You've seen what the consequences of globalising the intifada are. It's the death of 15 innocent people on the beaches of Bondi Beach simply for practising their religion in a peaceful way. I acknowledge that we don't have the same free speech rules that they have in the United States, and I don't make any apologies for that. We have got a responsibility to knit together our community that comes from different races and religions and places from all over the world. But we can do it in a peaceful way because I'm convinced that most Australians want to live together in peace and harmony and have no interest in poking each other, either in malicious, violent ways or even in incitement to violence and hatred and racism in our community. That's why these changes are necessary, and I'm hoping they get bipartisan or multi-partisan support as they travel through the Parliament later today and into tomorrow. I'm going to hand over to the Police Minister.
Thanks so much, Premier. Good morning, everyone. I have just read into the Legislative Assembly our changes that we choose to make in response to what happened in Bondi just 8 days ago. We signed up as a state to the National Firearms Agreement, and as part of that it was to make sure that we have greater oversight, that we have better compliance, and that we ensure that we reduce the number of guns on our streets. Today we have just done that. We are honouring what we have signed up for. And I think on the back of what we know was the worst terrorist attack in this state, in fact the country, then I think that that is so important. And having signed up to that with the national agreement, then we have an obligation to do that. And I have no doubt that this will set the path for the other states to follow as well. You know, removing guns from our street makes our streets safer. We have more than 1.1 million guns in our state. And reducing the number of those, particularly for rec shooters, I think is reasonable. We know that not everybody, or we know that many, are good law-abiding gun licence holders. We know that. But we also have to acknowledge the harm that can be caused by guns, and for that reason we have introduced these legislative reforms. I won't say any more. I'll hand you over to Sarah. Thank you, Mr. Welcome, Sarah.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Davis and I have the great honour of being the CEO of the Alana and Madeline Foundation. And as you know, the Alana and Madeline Foundation was established by Walter Mikac, AM, after he lost his wife Nanette and his two daughters Alana and Madeline at the Port Arthur tragedy 29 years ago. And in honour of our origin story and our legacy, we are part of the Australian Gun Safety Alliance. My colleague Stephen Bendel is an Australian gun safety expert and convenes the Australian Gun Safety Alliance. And under the National Firearms Agreement, we are very aware that firearms ownership in Australia is a privilege, but it is a privilege that is utterly conditional upon public safety. And here in Sydney, we lost our public safety. So I'm really pleased to be able to read a statement from Walter Mikac, AM. Unfortunately, he's not able to be here this afternoon, or he would be saying this himself, but this is his message. Today, I commend Premier Minns and the New South Wales Government for acting swiftly and decisively to close critical gaps in our gun laws and for putting community safety first. In the wake of the horrific attack at Bondi Beach, the New South Wales Government has shown that it is prepared to listen and to act in the interests of the whole community. The people of New South Wales expect their gun laws to be as strong as possible, and today the Minns government has taken important steps to meet that responsibility. I also acknowledge the announcement from the Honourable Kelly Sloan and the Liberals and thank them for their support of these measures, and I urge others to do the same. Like all Australians, my heart is with the families of the victims, the survivors, and Australia's Jewish community. I stand in love and in solidarity with all those affected by this unspeakable violence. I know the lifelong cost of violence and loss. I welcome the Minns government actions today, and I will continue to support all efforts to ensure our gun laws remain safe and strong. And together we must all continue working to build a better future where all our communities are free from violence and free from hate. Thank you.
Thanks.